Did you know you can run a second order confirmatory factor model in JASP with just a few mouse clicks? In this video, I'm going to show you how to do this. My name is Geiser. I'm an instructor with QuantFish. So let's get started and let's load a data file in JASP that we can then use for a second order factor analysis. For that, you click here and then you can select either a file that you have already used recently, like I have. So my file here is called longitudinal.txt, or you can browse your computer to find a file in a specific folder. JASP allows you to open SPSS data files, text files, Excel files, and files in other formats. So in this case, I have a text file here that I'm going to open. And you can see that here I have a bunch of variables with generic names, y11, y21, and so on. These variables refer to 3 different measurements that were taken at 4 different measurement occasions. So in this case, I have a longitudinal data set, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to specify a latent state trait model as a higher order or second order factor model. So that is one useful application of second order factors. In latent state trait models, we have time specific factors, and then also we have an overarching trait factor that is a time unspecific factor. So we can separate time specific variance from trait variance. So-called state residual variance can be separated from trait variance. Now let's do that, and let's go to the relevant option for that. You can find this under factor and then confirmatory factor analysis. Here you can very easily define your first order factors, and so my first factor would be the time 1 factor. So I'm going to call this time 1, and I'm going to move the first 3 indicators over into this field for the factor. So those are the 3 indicators that were measured at time 1. Next, I'm going to specify a factor for time 2. So I'm going to relabel this as time 2, and I'm going to move the next 3 indicators, y12, y22, and y32, which are the same indicators measured at time 2. And next, I'm going to add a third factor for time point 3. Time 3, and then I'm going to pick y13, y23, and y33 as indicators for the time 3 factor. Now, this should suffice. We could also add the 4th time point, but for our demonstration, 3 time points are enough for a second order factor model. And you can see that JASP has already generated some output on the right-hand side. Now, this output on the right-hand side is for a first order model, because so far we haven't specified a second order factor. And so what JASP has done so far is it has estimated a model with 3 time-specific factors, where those 3 time-specific factors are simply allowed to correlate across time. And you can see that by going to plots, and then when you add a model plot to the output, then you will see what this default model looks like before you add a second order factor. Here you can see the plot, and so you can see it's simply a model where we have a factor for each time point and they are correlated. Now, how can we add our second order factor? For this, you click here on second order factor, and you can see that now we can select indicators from the list of factors that is provided here, time 1, time 2, time 3. Those are the 3 first order factors, and so we're going to use them as indicators of a second order factor, and it's that easy. So that's it. So now the model is estimated as a second order factor model. We can see that too when we go back to the plot. You can see now we have a second order factor SO here instead of the correlations between the first order factors. Now we can dig deeper into the output of or that JASP here provides for us by default. You can see first is a table with chi-square model fit statistics. The first chi-square is for the baseline or independence model, which is typically not of great interest. So this is a model where all variables are assumed to be uncorrelated, and you can see that that's a very, very high chi-square for this model that indicates that that is completely rejected. Next is our target second order model, which yields a chi-square test statistic of 25.951, 24 degrees of freedom, and a p-value of 0.356. So that's a decent model fit. The model is not rejected based on this p-value, which is non-significant. Next are parameter estimates. And first we get the factor loadings in the first order model. You can see here that those are unstandardized estimates for those first order factor loadings with standard errors, z-statistics, p-values, and also 95% confidence intervals. I will show you later how you can get the standardized factor loadings in JASP as well. Next is a table with second order factor loadings. So here you can see time 1 has a factor loading fixed to 1 for identification. The other 2 time points have factor loadings freely estimated. And again, those loadings are unstandardized, and we will see later how the standardized factor loadings can be obtained. The next table provides us with the factor variances and residual variances. So for time 1, time 2, and time 3, the estimates that are provided here indicate factor residual variances. So in the sense of latent state trait theory, those would be the state residual factor variances, because the first order factors are regressed on the second order factor, and so as a result, they have residual variances as part of the model. For the second order factor, we get the variance estimate. So that's the 174.12. So in the sense of latent state trait theory, in a longitudinal model, that would be the trait variance component. Below that are the residual variances for the observed variables. So those are error variances for the indicators, so those would indicate measurement error and or variable specific effects that are in each indicator. So this is the default set of parameter estimates that we get in JASP for a model like this, and we can select additional output. So we can go back to the left-hand side and we can see what other options are provided there. Under model options, you can see you can include a mean structure. In this case, this would give you the intercepts of the variables, which you may or may not care about. Also, you can select uncorrelated factors, which doesn't make sense in this case because we're explaining the factor covariances by the second order factor, so we don't want to assume that they're uncorrelated. You can also switch to a different mode of model identification. So rather than using a marker variable and fixing the first factor loading to 1, as was done here by default, you can select method of identification where factor variances are fixed or where you use effects coding. Next is an option where you can include residual covariances of the indicators that may be relevant in longitudinal data. Sometimes people do that when they have repeated measurements of the same variables across time. Then they add covariances between the error terms if the indicators share specific variance across time. In this case, it's not necessary because this model fits well without any error correlations or covariances, so we're not gonna do anything here in this option. Next, you can see that you can also specify this model as a multi-group CFA. So you could have a second order factor model in different groups, and then you can also test for measurement invariance. There are different invariance settings here that you can test: configural, metric, scalar, strict, and structural. And the ones that concern the loadings are then also applied to the second order factor. So this is a way of testing measurement invariance also for a second order factor. Under additional output, we can select additional fit measures in addition to the chi-square. So when you click that option, you get a table, actually multiple tables with additional fit statistics, as you can see here. So most of them you probably don't need, but you get some of the common ones like CFA, RMSEA, and SRMR here in these tables. Also, you can select R squared. R squared gives you the explained variance in each variable, and we got to see where that appears? Oh, right here below the fit statistics. So you can see that we have for the observed variables R squared. So those would be interpreted as reliability estimates for the indicators. And then also we get R squared for the first order factors because they are regressed on the second order factor. And so those would indicate the proportion of variance in each first order factor that is accounted for by the general factor or trait factor in this case. So you can see that between 87.7% and 93.1% of the variance in each first order factor is accounted for by the general trait factor. And that shows that this is very stable data. So to say, those are variables that are very stable across time. There's a strong trait component. The trait factor explains a lot of variance in those time-specific factors, indicating that the construct is more trait-like than state-like. Furthermore, we can select reliability estimates for each factor, so composite reliability, and that appears further down below. Before the plot, you can see we get coefficient omega and we get coefficient alpha, which is Cronbach's alpha. In this case, since we didn't constrain the loadings to be equal, we would go with coefficient omega rather than coefficient alpha. Coefficient alpha would be for tau equivalent measures that have equal loadings, and so that is not the case here. These measures, as we can see here, have very different loadings. You can see they vary between 1 and 0.065 in the unstandardized metric. So tau equivalence is not given here, so we have to use omega. And so you can see omega shows high composite reliability for each time point. So this is when we aggregate the three indicators at a given time point. How large is composite reliability for a given time point? And it's very high, so above 0.9 for each time point, indicating that those indicators are very reliable. That was already also shown by these individual R squared values. So those now basically get aggregated for a given time point into an omega value. And since they are already pretty high for each individual measure here, the composite reliability omega is quite strong. Also, we get total omega, which doesn't make sense. So this would be across all three time points. That wouldn't really be of interest. But what may be of interest is the second order factor omega. So that would be the composite reliability for the G factor or the second order factor or trait factor. So that may or may not be of interest, that omega value of 0.942 for the second order factor. What else can we get? When we go back to the left-hand side, we already saw there's a plot. And then under advanced, we can get a standardization. So we can switch to a standardized solution by going from none, which we have now, which means right now we're looking at the unstandardized solution. We can go to all, and then you have a completely standardized solution where both the observed variables and the latent variables are in z-score metric with a variance of 1 and a mean of 0. And so you can see that then we get standardized factor loadings here. In the first table, we also get standardized factor loadings for the second order factor, and then standardized variances or residual variances, as well as standardized error variances for the observed variables. So this gives you the standardized solution. Also, you can select a different estimator. So the default estimator here in JASP is maximum likelihood for continuous variables. If you have ordinal data or non-normal data, you can select a different estimator. For ordinal variables, you might select WLSMV or DWLS. For non-normal continuous data, a good choice would be MLR to use as a robust estimator for non-normal data. Also, you can get different standard errors. So rather than the default maximum likelihood standard errors, you could get robust standard errors or bootstrap standard errors. And then also you can switch to a different missing data handling method. Right now, the default is full information maximum likelihood with missing data. And I would actually stick with that. So I wouldn't change that, because listwise deletion is usually a bad option where you lose data and you make more restrictive assumptions about the missing data mechanism than you have to do with then you have to make with full information maximum likelihood. So my full information maximum likelihood is a great option for handling missing data under the missing at random assumption, rather than having to assume missing completely at random data, which is more restrictive. I hope you found this video useful to learn about how to run a second order factor model in JASP, and I'll see you in the next video.